Welcome back to Book Break and happy Pride! In this video I'm talking about books that I think are going to become LGBTQIA+ classics of the future, and I've got a really great list here to recommend. I'm going to start with an obvious one, a book from within the last 10 years but that is already really a classic, and that is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. This is a book that is all over BookTube, all over BookTok, making people sob. It is a very emotional book. It's about a young man called Jude with a group of 4 friends, these 4 young men, and we watch them grow up and the ways that their relationships change. But Jude is the main character, and through flashbacks we learn about his incredibly traumatic past that he is trying to escape. So it is not a light-hearted book, but it is a wonderful book that is absolutely full of love in all its forms, whether that's the love of an adopted father and son, whether that is the love between 2 men, friendship and romantic love all gets explored in here. So for that reason, this book will be, and already is, a queer classic. Next, I predict that Shaggy Bane by Douglas Stewart is going to become a queer classic of the future. This is a Booker Prize winning novel that is going to be read and reread for generations. Again, this is a very sad book. I do promise that I don't just have sad books on this list. In fact, I think this is the last of the major heartbreakers. The novel is about a young boy called Shaggy growing up in Glasgow with an alcoholic mother, and so the book is largely about this relationship between him and his mother, who you love so much and Shaggy loves so much, but is letting him down in huge ways and hurting herself along the way. So it's really devastating reading about that dynamic. Shaggy also is growing up, coming to terms with the fact that he is gay, living in a community where that is completely unwelcome. I've just noticed that the judges of the Booker Prize are quoted on the back here, describing this as a long-term classic that will be loved, admired and remembered for a very long time, which is exactly what I was thinking when I picked it for this video. Next, I've got Nevada by Imogen Binnie. This one is about a New York punk trans woman who steals her ex-girlfriend's car and heads west on a journey of self-discovery. Along the way, she meets James, who she suspects may also be trans but hasn't realised it yet, and so she becomes this sort of trans role model, which is a role she wasn't entirely ready for. Tori Peters, the author of Detransition Baby, said that this is the book that launched the trans writing scene. So this will no doubt become a queer road trip cult classic. The next book I'm going to recommend isn't even out yet. This is The Women Could Fly by Megan Giddings, and I will put up here a picture of what the finished cover is going to look like. This book I think could be the next generation's The Handmaid's Tale. It is a feminist dystopia, but with a touch of queerness and magic. In the world of this book, magic is real, and so women are closely monitored on suspicion of being witches. They are also mandated by the state they must get married before the age of 30. Our main character, Jo, is a biracial, bisexual woman approaching 30 who does not want to get married. She is also descended from a woman suspected of being a witch. A queer feminist classic in the making, if I ever heard one. Devotion by Hannah Kent is a beautiful queer love story about 2 girls in love and the long, brutal journey they have to make from Prussia to a new, safe home in Australia. The book is historical fiction, but there is an otherworldly twist that makes the book completely timeless. And for that reason, I can just see this one being read by generations and generations to come. Hannah Kent is already a beloved author. She's the author of Burial Rites and The Good People. I might be biased, but I'm predicting this is the one that is going to make it to classic status just because of how powerfully the love in this book is depicted. And Hannah Kent has said that she wrote this book in part as a love letter to her wife, in part as a love letter to her own younger self. So this is one that can resonate with so many people. I predict that I Kissed Shara Wheeler by Casey McQuiston is going to become a young adult classic in the vein of the Georgia Nicholson series, Angus Thongs and Full Frontal Snogging, and so on. This book is very, very funny and very, very gay. It is about a beautiful teenage prom queen in the making, about to become class valedictorian, who vanishes, leaving behind a treasure hunt and 3 confused classmates, each of whom she kissed before she left. This book has got all the trappings of classic teen movies, classic teen rom-coms, but with all of the character tropes completely subverted, making this one ready to become a classic in its own right. She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan is an epic historical fantasy that is bound to find its place on shelves of classic fantasy in the future. This book is a retelling of the rise to power of the founder of the Ming dynasty, but with gender-fluid characters, a queer romance, and an unlikely and morally grey hero. Not only does this book subvert the norms of the time period in which it's set, it also subverts the norms of storytelling today. So it is brand new and forging its way to become a classic. The Animals at Lockwood Manor by Jane Healey has so many echoes of Jane Eyre that this book was destined to become a classic from day one. It is gothic, historical fantasy with a queer love story in it. It's set during the Second World War, and it's about a woman called Hetty who is put in charge of overseeing the evacuation of the animals from the Natural History Museum. So they must be moved out of London to be kept safe during the war, and they are moved to this country manor house that is owned by a very unwelcoming lord of the manor and his beautiful but haunted daughter. Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield is a strange, mournful novel that is just begging to be read and reread to uncover all the layers of meaning. This is about a married couple, Leah and Miri, before and after Leah went on a deep-sea diving mission with work from which she never came back the same. Even Florence Welch of Florence and the Machine fame is a big fan of this book. It is part love story, part horror story, and along with Miri, you find yourself completely grieving for Leah and the woman that she used to be, while trying to work out what actually it is that has happened to her after this dive under the sea. I can really see this book being studied in schools or written about in essays on English degrees at uni, and I can just totally imagine someone in 50 years describing this as their favourite book. Definitely a future classic. And finally, the last book I'm predicting will become a future classic is Paul Takes the Form of a Mortal Girl by Andrea Lawler. This is the next generation's Orlando. It's just inevitable that this one's going to be a classic. The plot is very hard to describe, but the book is very readable. So it's about our main character called Paul, who is a shapeshifter. He can change his body and gender at will, and so we go with him on this tour of different 90s queer subcultures as he explores these different identities in different bodies. It's fascinating for that reason, and also very, very funny. I can see no future in which this book is not hailed as a classic. So those are my predictions of the LGBTQIA+ classics of the future. I would love to know your predictions in the comments below, and I will also link here to a playlist of all of our other queer content so you can keep celebrating Pride Month in style, and I'll see you next time.